It's a chilly Thursday here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. Industrial output in Korea rebounded a month in November thanks to increased output in the services sector. From the launch of Korea's first internet-only bank to the ongoing Bitcoin craze in the country, we take a look at what changes and innovation took place in Korea's financial industry this year. Korea's industrial output surged in November, adding to expectations that the economy will meet its target of 3% growth this year. Although broad gains were seen in production, consumption, and investment, business sentiment, especially in the auto industry, isn't looking so great. Our Kim Ji-yeon starts us off.
Output across all industries in Korea rose 1.7% in November compared to the same period last year. Statistics Korea attributes the jump to increased output in the services sector. Output in the finance and insurance sectors rose 10.4% on year. Retail sales also soared 5.6% on month on increased sales of durable goods, the biggest increase in 8 years and 9 months. However, automobile production dropped by more than 6% on year.
Looking ahead, business sentiment is showing signs of slowing down. The construction sector in particular, as prices of raw materials surge.
Business sentiment in the local automobile industry dropped due to prolonged labor strikes and massive lawsuits over wages. The Bank of Korea says its business survey index for the automobile sector dropped 6 points from the previous month to 70 in December. A reading below 100 means there are more pessimists than optimists. Despite this, a local expert says sales by Korea's largest automaker, Hyundai Motor, and its sister company, Kia Motors, will continue to increase next year as Beijing's economic retaliation against Seoul's deployment of the THAAD U.S. missile defense system shows signs of waning.
Due to the retaliatory measures, exports to China have faltered this year, with combined sales of Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors amounting to 1 million units. But next year, auto sales to China are expected to surge to between 1.4 and 2 million units.
Meanwhile, business sentiment in the shipbuilding and transport sectors dropped 5 points to just 40. Excluding the semiconductor-related sectors, all manufacturing sectors had figures below the 100 mark. Business sentiment in wholesale and retail sales rose this month by 6 points, mainly due to end-of-year shopping. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon told government ministries on Thursday to redouble their efforts in deregulating Korea's services sector. Let's take a listen.
I urge all ministries to be competitive in finding out whether there are any irrational regulations and to start removing them.
He compared unnecessary regulations to, quote, the bulging waistline of a middle-aged man, citing the need for the government to encourage innovation-led growth. Prime Minister Lee also emphasized that the government should relax regulations which hinder business activities to foster a more investment-friendly environment. Seoul and Washington will kick off their first round of negotiations next week over amending the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. For that, top negotiators from Korea's Trade Ministry and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative will sit down in Washington next Friday, which is January 5th. Now, the talks are not expected to be easy, as the Trump administration wants to revise multiple terms in the automobile and agro-livestock industries in a bid to reduce its trade deficit. Seoul is planning to protect sensitive sectors like agriculture while vying for a mutually beneficial deal. The two sides have held 2 preliminary meetings to arrange the amendment talks since Presidents Moon Jae-in and Donald Trump took office earlier this year. It's been a difficult few years for Koreans searching for a job, with the country seeing low employment participation and slow wage growth. A new report has laid the problems bare, painting a relatively grim picture of the country's job market. Our Lee Ju-young has more.
2017 has been a grind for job seekers here in Korea, especially those who are younger, with the youth unemployment rate hovering at an all-time high. And a new report doesn't paint a pretty picture either. A new OECD report released by Korea's Ministry of Employment and Labor on Thursday shows Korea's employment rate at a lowly 21st out of 35 OECD countries. The employment rate in 2015 was 66.1% among people between 15 to 64 years of age. Annual work hours for Koreans were also the second highest at 2,071 hours, trailing only Mexico. The labor income share ranked 23rd out of the 35 OECD countries at 64%. The report forecasts that the number of young, middle-aged, and elderly workers will all decrease as the country ages amid the chronically low birth rate. In terms of gender, there was a higher number of women in the working-age population than men, and this trend is expected to continue. The employment rate of young people between the ages of 15 and 29 has been declining in the past, but has started to show a slight increase since 2013. The employment rate of people over 50 has steadily increased since 2003, but the number of recently employed is slowing down. Experts say the data shows Korea still has a long way to go in improving working conditions, which are among the harshest in the OECD. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
The Moon Jae-in government has reached 83% of this year's goal to convert 74,000 non-regular workers in the public sector to regular status. The Ministry of Employment and Labor said as of Tuesday, nearly 62,000 irregular workers had completed the process of becoming permanent workers. Breaking it down further, some 51,000 contract laborers in the public sector are now regular workers, representing 73% of the state's initial target. Meanwhile, more than 100% of this year's goal for dispatch and service sector workers was reached, with some 23,000 becoming regular employees. The Bank of Korea is set to continue its monetary easing policies next year while keeping a close tab on growth and inflation to adjust the country's interest rate accordingly. The central bank came to this conclusion after holding its annual monetary strategy meeting for 2018 on Thursday. The BOK added while the domestic economy is likely to grow in the 3% range next year, inflationary pressure is unlikely to be high. The bank also plans to carefully consider factors like potential financial imbalances stemming from household debt and changes in the monetary policies of other major economies. Possible volatility in the country's financial market due to geopolitical risks will also be kept under close watch. The Presidential Committee on the Fourth Industrial Revolution held its third monthly meeting today. The meeting looked at ways to incorporate next-generation technology into the Korean economy. Here's our Kim Hae-sung with more.
The Fourth Industrial Revolution Committee held a meeting Thursday to deliberate on measures to link technology and infrastructure with social policies.
Since our committee kicked off in October, we have held meetings every month with 21 ministries. At the third meeting today, we will discuss the more detailed strategies on the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
The agenda was mainly on adopting a 5G network by 2019, making Korea the first country in the world to do so. A surge in data and sensors from artificial intelligence and robots will require a fast data processing network. The Science Ministry said it'll test the 5G network at the upcoming 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics and distribute it to telecommunications firms by next year. Participants also discussed ways to expand the Internet of Things network and increase the Wi-Fi speed in Korea's subways 100-fold. The government expects that investing in the 5G and IoT network will add $27.5 billion to the economy and create over 11,000 jobs over the next 5 years. The Transport Ministry unveiled its plans to create a smart airport that uses big data to help increase transport efficiency. Education policies to nurture students' creativity and investment in drone technology were also discussed. Thursday's meeting comes 1 month after the committee announced its 5-year plan. The gathering mainly focused on building the networks and infrastructure needed for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the next time the committee meets in early 2018, more ministries are expected to announce their detailed strategies. Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily.
Stunning scenes unfolded on Korea's cryptocurrency exchanges this morning as prices fell off a cliff following the government's surprise announcement. The government says it plans to require real name transactions in virtual currency trading starting next month. The use of anonymous virtual accounts will be banned to regulate what they see as out-of-control speculation. The government's policy coordination minister said Thursday that only real-name bank accounts and matching accounts at exchanges can be used for deposits and withdrawals. The issuance of new accounts at cryptocurrency exchanges will be banned for good, with the government saying it won't tolerate the situation, which it described as one of abnormal speculations. So it was a year of change and innovation in Korea's financial sector as we saw the rise of the country's first internet-only banks, while Bitcoin burst out of the shadows to lure investors across the globe. Not only that, major central banks, including the Bank of Korea and the U.S. Fed, began their shift towards interest rate normalization while scaling back on quantitative easing. With that, let's take a look at what changes came about in 2017 in the financial sector, as well as what we can expect going into the new year.
Last month, the Bank of Korea raised its key policy rate to 1.5%, the first hike in more than 6 years. The move heralded the beginning of its policy tightening cycle on the back of a recovering economy and rising exports. Along with the Bank of Korea, major central banks, including the U.S. Federal Reserve, have also been reversing their crisis-era stimulus programs while planning for further rate hikes in the new year. The financial technology industry, or fintech, has opened the door to easier and low-cost financial services in 2017 with the launch of Korea's first internet-only banks. Since its launch in July, KakaoBank had the highest number of active monthly users in November out of all mobile banking apps. It is challenging the dominance of traditional lenders by providing simple and easy-to-use financial services. And in recent months, cryptocurrencies have made headlines across the globe, with the price of Bitcoin, the world's first and best-known virtual currency, surging more than 19-fold this year. Bitcoin has been extremely popular, especially here in Korea, with its value even reaching a whopping 25 million won, or roughly $24,000 per coin on December 8th.
And to tell us more about this, Professor Kim Se-wan from Ewha Women's University joins us in the studio today. Hello, Professor.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's start with the launch of Korea's first internet-only banks, KakaoBank and K-Bank. Now, with their debut, we saw some big changes in the banking sector. So what's your general assessment of the Korea's financial sector in 2017?
As you said, one of the most significant changes in Korean financial market was the launching two internet-only banks, KakaoBank and K-Banks. In retrospect, that gave two significant impacts on Korean financial market. The first is, thanks to more competition between commercial banks, along with two new banks, more loans were provided at a lower interest rate in a more convenient way to bank clients. And secondly, that really increased, the two internet banks really increased the restructuring traditional commercial banks. For example, KB laid off over 2,800 workers this year, and Citibank decided to close 80% of their branch offices, over 100 branch offices.
We definitely saw a lot of brick and mortar banks closing down this year.
Exactly.
Right? All right. Well, it wasn't all good news this year as unfair recruiting practices in the sector came into spotlight, perhaps highlighting the need for more structural reforms in the industry. So what's your view on this?
I still can't believe that there was a corruption in financial supervisory services hiring process. And it has been also found that inappropriate hiring were spread out to other commercial banks too. So that really hurt general public's feeling under circumstances of the young generation's unemployment rate exceed 10%, which is one of the highest in history. And particularly, these financial jobs are the most wanted jobs to new college graduates. So it is very important to maintain fairness and transparency of the hiring system, particularly in public sectors and commercial banks.
And like we heard in the report, the Bank of Korea raised the key interest rate for the first time in over 6 years in November. Now, what can we expect from the Bank of Korea as well as some other major central banks around the world in the new year?
It is pretty sure that all major central banks all around the world will increase interest rate in the next year several times. And particularly, U.S. Federal Reserve is expected to increase interest rate 2 to 3 times in the next year. Given that external situation, if Korean economy is staying on the track of over 3% economic growth, Bank of Korea will increase interest rate over 2 times. So that means by the end of 2018, key interest rate of Bank of Korea will be over 2%.
Oh, wow. Now, but then the government is expected to continue its expansionary fiscal policy, while the BOK is hinting at more monetary tightening. So could this policy divergence perhaps, cause or affect or bring about a struggle between the two sides?
Right. So therefore, it is very important to keep the balance or harmony between central banks and governments. The government is about to carry out one of the largest and one of the most aggressive expansionary fiscal policy from early next year. Given that situation, if Bank of Korea increases interest rate too fast, that might neutralize government's or president's fiscal policy. So it is pretty much expected that Bank of Korea will be extremely cautious in increasing interest rate in the first half of next year. So maybe they will be considering increasing interest rate only after summer of 2018.
Let's move on to the ongoing Bitcoin craze here in the country and also around the world. I mean, with its extreme popularity, the Korean government says that it plans to impose additional measures to regulate the cryptocurrency market and its trading. So what's your outlook on cryptocurrencies for the new year?
Well, there's no question that the Bitcoin market is really crazy and hot because of the bubbles. So bubble is driving the market, not the people's rational thinking. So, and government is about to impose taxes on capital gains from the bit market along with other restrictions. So the fever of the Bitcoin market will be cooled down sometime in the next year, even though we never know when it is exactly. But it is important also remember that the Bitcoin never disappears in the future because it is partially accepted as a new medium of exchange or money.
Right.
So in the future, in the long run, Bitcoins will be accepted as a substitute of traditional monies.
All right, last but not least, what are some of the major issues or factors that we need to keep a close eye on in year 2018?
I think in the next year, the fundamental function of the financial system or industry will be more important. In the next year, it is expected that we will have more startups, therefore small-sized companies. So at the early stages of these new startups and small companies, the support from the financial market is very important. So that fundamental role of the financial system should be intensified. And secondly, the financial system should be growing up as independent employers of the market and the whole economy. That means, as of now, financial industry only covers less than 5% of the total employment. That should be increased in the future.
Which will help to increase more quality jobs as well.
Exactly.
All right, thank you so much for that wrap-up and outlook today, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Following Apple's admission last week that it deliberately slowed down older iPhone models, a local law firm is preparing to sue the American tech giant. Hanuri Law Firm says it will file a lawsuit against Apple's U.S. headquarters and Apple Korea after examining legal reviews. It says Apple didn't notify users of such important information, adding that the omission was clearly against the law. The firm also said it will start gathering class action participants through its website starting from today. Apple confirmed last week that it purposely slowed down the iPhone 6, 6 Plus, 6S, and 6S Plus through a software update. Ethical consumerism is on the rise here in Korea, moving beyond the old norms of making purchase decisions based on low prices and high quality. More and more consumers are now prioritizing ethical values and social contributions in their choice of goods, even if it comes with a higher price tag. Let's take a look.
This is a shop in Insadong, which handles various fashion accessories such as bags, hats, and wallets. All products have a noticeable grain pattern. The products are actually made from cork wood. By collecting the bark without cutting the trees, it does not damage the forest, and hence, cork leather is considered a highly eco-friendly material.
코르크로 되어 있어서 우선 가볍고, 그러니까 코르크는 이제 발수성이 좋기 때문에 그래서 이제 좀 땀이 많으신 분들이 좀 특히나 더 좋아하시고요.
Consumers are opening their wallets even though they are 1.5 times more expensive than typical animal leather products.
You're killing animals in order to get leather, but since it doesn't damage the trees, I think this is a great alternative to regular leather.
There are a lot of young and elderly people purchasing the goods, and if you're interested in a new eco-friendly material, it's something you should purchase.
In 2011, the company started to produce fashion accessories using cork material. Currently, it's developing various products such as home interior goods and everyday items, and plans to expand into the overseas markets such as Hong Kong and Japan.
We've recently seen the discovery of tainted chicken eggs out of various farms. I think there's more and more interest in issues regarding animal ethics and welfare. And in part, due to that thinking, cork is being well received as an eco-friendly material.
Recently, ethical consumption, which practices environmental protection and animal welfare through consumption, has been receiving the spotlight. The range of ethical consumption is getting wider with the emergence of a consumer environment that values the pursuit of common social interests. These include ethical values such as workers' treatment, fair trade, and environmental issues, as opposed to simply lowering costs and raising efficiency. According to one survey, 7 out of 10 consumers are willing to choose more ethical products, even if they are a little more expensive.
It is basically caused by a growing number of socially aware consumers, followed by a higher level of consumer influence. As opposed to the past when consumer played a more passive role, they're now much more conscious of their purchase decisions.
A company that developed the first ever environmentally friendly shipping boxes in Korea, as opposed to typical packaging that causes environmental pollution. Most frozen and refrigerated products are shipped using styrofoam boxes, but these do not compose even after 500 years, causing soil contamination while being difficult in waste separation. Shipping boxes made by laminating insulation in a regular corrugated cardboard box. Freshness is maintained from 0 degrees Celsius to 10 degrees Celsius for up to 9 hours, and recycling is possible. Also, eco-friendly ice packs are about to be commercialized soon, but unlike existing ice packs, they can be recycled since it doesn't use chemicals.
이건 그대로 매립 혹은 소각, 폐기되는 부분이에요. 자원 재순환이 안 되는 거죠. 물뿐만 아니라 이런 필름지까지도 이번에 개발 완료한 이 제품은 비닐로 재활용이 되는 거고 이 물은 정제돼서 다시 또 상수도로 쓰이는 거죠.
Already, various types of eco-friendly packages are being introduced in the overseas fresh food market, including Amazon.
The consumers seem to have had the greatest demand for it. They found it contradictory that the organic baby food that their child is eating came in a package that isn't environmentally friendly. So we have to appeal to the customers by using something different and eco-friendly to sell the products. So with that in mind, our goal is to develop environmentally friendly containers and packages.
The more people who agree with the idea of ethical consumption, the more likely that a sustainable environment can be passed on to future generations, while social conflicts related to material consumption can be resolved.
It's important to change the direction that consumption is heading. If you start steering the direction of spending towards minimizing environmental or social side effects, the company will make products accordingly. You need to start thinking about what kind of consumption helps contribute to society and not hurt the environment.
making small contributions through consumption. Ethical consumption for the environment, animals, and others. We hope that this will become the foundation in building a better society.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.